The Boy Who Chased His Shadow. Once upon a time, in a quiet town nestled between rolling green hills and sparkling rivers, there lived a boy named Oliver. Oliver was not like the other children in his neighborhood. He was endlessly curious, always asking questions, and forever searching for adventure in the most ordinary of places. But there was one thing about Oliver that made him truly unique. He was fascinated by shadows. Ever since he was little, Oliver had noticed how his shadow followed him everywhere he went, whether he was running through the tall grass behind his house, skipping down the sunlit lanes, or sitting quietly under the giant oak tree at the edge of the schoolyard. His shadow was always there, stretching long and thin in the morning, shrinking to a small puddle at noon, and growing tall and mysterious as the sun set in the west. But one summer afternoon, as the golden sunlight streamed through his bedroom window, Oliver noticed something strange. His shadow, which usually mirrored his movements perfectly, seemed to hesitate. When Oliver waved his hand, the shadow wiggled, but then, for the briefest moment, did not follow. It was as if it had a mind of its own. Oliver blinked in surprise. He stood up quickly, spun in a circle, and watched as his shadow spun too, just a fraction of a second behind. His heart thumped with excitement. Was his shadow alive? From that moment on, Oliver became obsessed with his shadow. He watched it as he walked, noticing how it changed shapes and sizes depending on the time of day and where he stood. He tried to trick it by jumping and moving suddenly, but it always caught up, as if it were playing a secret game with him. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with streaks of orange and purple, Oliver sat on his porch steps, pondering. He whispered softly, "Shadow, do you want to play?" And to his astonishment, his shadow seemed to nod. As the streetlights flickered on, Oliver's shadow grew longer and stretched across the sidewalk. It seemed to beckon to him, inviting him to follow. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, Oliver stood up and stepped off the porch. His shadow led the way, gliding silently along the pavement, slipping over pebbles, around tree trunks, and through patches of moonlight. Oliver followed, his imagination soaring. Was this the beginning of an adventure? Where would his shadow take him? He tiptoed past his sleeping neighbors' houses, careful not to make a sound. Down the street and into the park they went. The playground was empty and bathed in silvery light. Swings creaked gently in the breeze, and the slide glimmered like a river of metal. Oliver's shadow raced ahead, leaping up onto the merry-go-round and spinning in dizzying circles. Laughing, Oliver chased after it, feeling lighter than ever before. Suddenly, his shadow darted towards the edge of the park, where a row of tall hedges grew thick and wild. Oliver hesitated, but curiosity pulled him forward. He squeezed through a narrow gap, branches tickling his arms, and emerged into a place he had never seen before. A secret garden, hidden from the world. The garden was magical. Fireflies floated above beds of midnight blue flowers, their tiny lights twinkling like stars. A gentle breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle, and somewhere nearby, a cricket sang a lullaby. At the center of the garden stood an ancient stone sundial, its face worn smooth by time. Oliver's shadow circled the sundial, then paused. In the silvery moonlight, it seemed to shimmer and dance. Oliver stepped closer, his heart pounding with wonder. He reached out, and for the first time, he felt a soft, cool tingle on his fingertips, as if his shadow was real and alive. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The garden was silent, the only sound the steady beat of Oliver's heart. Then, softly, a whisper drifted through the air, a voice that was both old and young, wise and playful. "Thank you for following me," the voice said. "Few have the courage to chase their own shadow." Oliver looked around, wide-eyed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breath. "I am your shadow," the voice replied. "I am the part of you that dreams, that wonders, that explores the places no one else can see. Tonight, You have proven that you are brave, curious, and kind." Oliver felt a warm glow in his chest. He smiled, feeling proud and a little bit magical himself. "What happens now?" he whispered. His shadow swirled around his feet, wrapping him in a gentle hug. "Now, you must return home. But remember this night, and know that I will always be with you. Whenever you feel alone, lost, or afraid, look for me. I will be there, waiting to play, to explore, to adventure with you." With that, the garden began to fade. The flowers, the fireflies, the sundial, all dissolving into mist. Oliver felt himself growing sleepy, his eyelids heavy. He closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them again, he was back on his porch steps, the first light of dawn beginning to paint the sky with gentle pinks and golds. He looked down and saw his shadow, quietly resting beside him, just as it always had. But Oliver knew things would never be quite the same. He had chased his shadow and discovered the magic within himself. From that day on, Oliver saw the world differently. He noticed the little wonders that others missed, the way sunlight danced on puddles, the patterns of tree branches on the ground, the hidden corners of the neighborhood he had never explored. He listened for whispers in the breeze and watched for shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. And whenever he felt uncertain or afraid, he would remember the secret garden, the sundial, and the voice of his shadow. He would smile and take a deep breath, knowing that adventure was always just a step away, waiting in the space between sunlight and shade. The summer days passed, each one filled with new discoveries. Sometimes Oliver invited his friends to play shadow games in the park, racing their shadows across the grass, or trying to make the silliest shapes they could imagine. Other times he wandered alone, following his shadow and letting his imagination lead the way. One afternoon, as he walked home from the library with a stack of books in his arms, Oliver noticed something unusual. A little girl sat on the curb, looking sad. Her shadow was small and crumpled, as if it had lost its energy. Oliver knelt beside her and asked gently, "Are you okay?" The girl sniffled. "I wanted to play with my shadow, but it won't do anything fun. It just sits there." Oliver smiled, remembering the secret his own shadow had shared. "Maybe your shadow is waiting for you to invite it on an adventure. Want to try together?" The girl nodded. Oliver stood up and stretched his arms wide, watching his shadow do the same. The girl giggled and copied him, and soon both shadows were dancing on the sidewalk, twirling and leaping in the warm afternoon sun. Their laughter filled the air, and for a moment it seemed as if the shadows themselves were laughing too. From that day forward, Oliver became known as the boy who chased his shadow and helped others find the magic in theirs. He taught his friends how to play shadow tag, how to make shadow puppets on the wall, and how to look for adventure in the places where light and darkness met. But Oliver never forgot the secret garden, the sundial, and the promise his shadow had made. No matter how big he grew or how far he traveled, he knew that his shadow would always be there, ready for the next adventure, just waiting to be chased. As the years passed, Oliver's adventures with his shadow became stories he would tell to his little brother, his friends, and eventually to his own children. He would gather them close on starry nights and whisper about the magic that lives in every shadow and the courage it takes to chase your dreams, even when they seem just out of reach. And so, the legend of the boy who chased his shadow lived on, reminding children everywhere that wonder is never far away. Sometimes, it's right at your feet, waiting for you to notice, to follow, and to believe. For in every shadow, there is a story. In every heart, there is a dream waiting to be chased. And in every child like Oliver, there is a spark of magic, just waiting to light up the world. So the next time you see your shadow dancing on the sidewalk, remember Oliver's adventure. Wave, twirl, and maybe, even just for a moment, chase after it. Who knows? You just might find a secret garden, a whisper of magic, and the start of your own extraordinary adventure. And as long as there are children who dream, and sunlight to cast shadows, the story will never end. The end.